So, thank you, Johnny, for joining me. I understand that you are a yoga enthusiast and a social conscious and wellness person. I want to know what led you into the realm of social consciousness and wellness.
Word. Well, thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure to be on your podcast. Just wanted to share my gratitude first. But yes, I am what I've labeled a consciousness artist, which sort of blends together all the realms of yoga, meditation, mindfulness, self-reflection, all of that hippy dippy jazz. Uh, what led me into this practice, ironically enough, I have a degree in theater and cinema, and I first began experimenting with it to prepare for roles, to get ready to go on stage, and I used yoga and breathing practices of very practical circumstance, but never really dove into it, especially once I left the stage. A few years later, my life just started crumbling apart. Um, Romantic relationships, family relationships, um, substance abuse. It just kept going to rock bottom, depression, all sorts of different things. And I had tried so many different avenues of where to turn, you know, religion, which was never really a big thing for me anyways, but I was desperate. More substances, friends, family, and just couldn't find anything outside of myself. And stumbled upon a book called When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron. And I saw that book and it just felt like serendipity because things were falling apart left and right. So I went and I bought that book and I read it front to back that evening, and it led me into the practice of meditation through the tradition of Tibetan Buddhism. And that book was recommended, or I guess recommended. It was the early days of Instagram, but a yogi had mentioned it, and I saw it. So when the meditation game started working, I decided, I got this recommended from a yogi. Maybe I should dive a little deeper into that yoga game as well. And that's sort of how the story got rolling. It felt good. It started working, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Keep trying.
Yeah, I mean, I know I've spoken to you about this. I know that we all go through things. Some people, their lives are so deep, like they go through things that are deeper than most people. And it's good that when your life was going deep, spiraling down, you were able to find like something that helped you keep you afloat. Something that brought you out of, when things fall apart. So, what was it about that book that struck you?
Um, One of the things I really, really loved was, and the author, Pema Chodron, very influential individual. She spoke on the matter that um, there was really no hand holding in this path. You were going to look deep into yourself and have to figure it out, have to make your own way and make your own path. And there was a real sense of removing a lot of the bullshit, for lack of a better term. Like, there's no fluff, there's no magical ending at the end of this. If you live your life right, there's just so much uncertainty, but there's a way to maneuver through it, and find joy and peace and clarity. And I really liked that proactive, um, sense of being able to find control within a life and a world and an existence that we have absolutely no control over. Being able to rein in on the parts of your existence of which are within your control. And most of that is just how we react or respond, or reflect on what gets thrown at us in any given circumstance. So that sort of straight to the point, proactiveness really, really resonated with me. And again, too, I felt like I had just exhausted so many other avenues, and this this practice of meditation and mindfulness was the first time that I was able to have that sort of connection to myself and others and my experience in this life without the assistance of psychedelics which up to that point had been the only way that I had sort of tapped into that elevated consciousness, which is not a sustainable path. And this one is much more sustainable.
I mean, listen. So I'm into psychedelics. Not I don't take them, but I have seen researches where people were describing their experience with psychedelic. Now it doesn't last that long because those people have been in controlled situations. So they actually go to the doctors to get psychedelics, and they're monitored throughout the night. And the intention for them is to be able to have a breakthrough moment of what it is that's in their mind that's preventing them from whatever it is that they're trying to achieve. So I'm aware of psychedelics and I understand what it does. Now when you do it outside of like a controlled setting, I don't know how it affects one, because I've never actually tried it. So what led you down the substance abuse and all of that? How did you begin that?
um, so substance abuse is a very broad term because there are a number of substances. Um, I began drinking alcohol in high school. Just after football games or on the weekends, and very controlled circumstances. It would just be me and a couple of very close friends in somebody's basement somewhere. Um, you know, but then college came and we're outside of the nest, a little more freedom. So my biggest issue with substance abuse has always been alcohol. That was my demon. And that one, they joke about, or they say, marijuana is the gateway drug. It's alcohol. It's alcohol. 100%. Now, for the most of my life, from adolescence, when I began drinking into college, I just drank alcohol and smoked weed. Um, After graduation, I had tried, and psychedelics, or at beginning with LSD and then mushrooms and just the trippy stuff. Um, I had my first trip and opened up this level of consciousness, and I was asking questions that I had never even considered before. I went through my ego death, um, and I felt like I had tapped into something that was previously um, unattainable in my consciousness. So I went running for answers, and the only way that I knew how to acquire them was through more psychedelics. Um, as I had mentioned earlier, though, I began to realize this is not sustainable. And I have witnessed folks who kept searching down that rabbit hole and went too far and are never coming back. They've lost a piece of reality, and I did not wish to maneuver through that lane. But between that and a lot of time in the festival circuit, music festivals and concerts and raves, um, it just began to spiral, and that's part of what led me to that dark moment of what I referred to earlier. And then I discussed, and I knew that I couldn't continue trying to search for this higher elevated consciousness through substances, and that my alcohol was the one that was just killing it all. That was dulling the senses, muting any elevation of consciousness. So then I again, just by fate, divine intervention, good fortune, whatever it is, I don't care. I, I stumbled upon this book and this practice, and that was the beginning of. I like to say, before that, I had a compass. When I began my practices, I started creating a map.
Got it. Wow. I mean, I think some people say that. I didn't know that being on um, what is it? How would you describe them? LSD and stuff like that would suck away the beauty out of life. I did not know that. I thought that it actually gave you beauty. You were able to see something different from what we saw. That was what drew people to it. I did not know that it took beauty away.
So it does. And herein lies the concept of non-duality, I believe. It can be both. There is in moderation, and this is a lot of why it has now made it into medical and psychological use.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it be, microdosing of LSD or psilocybin, even ketamine is being used in certain circumstances now, where in controlled microdosed applications, you can really unlock this level of consciousness, because what these psychedelics do is they release chemicals and within the pineal gland. Pineal gland is often referred to as the third eye.
Mm-hmm.
So this is sort of a Kickstarter. It's a catalyst to induce these reactions within the pineal gland, which bring about visualizations, auditory hallucinations, things of the sorts. These psychedelic endeavors, but it also taps into a deeper level of consciousness. We can do that naturally. Um, it just takes a lot more dedication and time and practice through deep states of meditation, movement-based meditations like yoga, or certain practices of Reiki. A long laundry list of, like I said earlier, the hippy dippy stuff. But that takes a lot more work, as opposed to just taking this little bit of a substance that's a catalyst that can do so, and it can bring about really, really great um, self realizations. It can help heal a lot of trauma sometimes. It can bring us outside of ourselves and our ego. Therein lies the ego death that I had mentioned earlier. The issue is that it is so much easier to reach these levels of reflection or consciousness with these substances. So a lot of times as human beings, we take the easy way out, and we can get, hooked on them and
Mm-hmm.
really, really like them a lot. But when we're just being thrust into them, and then you add in all of the sensory hallucinations and things, we can sort of lose touch with a lot of reality. As opposed to, now, don't get me wrong, you can have a spiritual awakening through the natural methods too, and sort of lose touch with reality, or maybe not even reality, but realism, like living into this world of hypotheticals of how life might ought to work, but and realistically, that's just not how life works, type
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. I mean, I know about not being in reality a lot because, when you go into your mind, you could get lost there. Because for me, I use my imagination a lot. And I know, and I know that sometimes it's dangerous. Even that you have to kind of control, because you can get lost in your mind, and your mind can tell you stories that are not real. So I know about that. And I know, because I have to see things in my mind before I can actually actualize them, right? So I rely heavily on my mind. So that's why I don't do alcohol, I don't do drugs, I don't do any of that. Anything that inebriates my mind has to go. Period. Because if I don't see, if my mind is not, like, if I can't focus, I just lose track of everything. So how did you get out of all of this? I know you read Pima's book. Um, why what is it, when things fall apart, but then how are you maintaining that level of consciousness outside of using drugs? Because I know that for some people they struggle a lot, and then there's the stage of relapse. Have you had to relapse, and how do you maintain that level of consciousness throughout?
Yeah, so anybody that has an issue with substance abuse or addiction, um, you know, you do not you do not truthfully ever slay your dragon. You simply grow the will and the defense and the strength to keep that dragon at bay. It's a lifelong endeavor. Once the dragon has been born, it does not die. You simply keep it at bay. So I will say the thing that really helps me um, to keep it at bay is to stay consistent with my practices and um, and the tenacity to continue moving through it. Now, I haven't shared this, so you're getting the exclusive. But I keep it very real with my peoples. Authenticity reigns supreme is like one of my primary teaching philosophies. It's what all of my peoples know. I only have a handful of them, but authenticity is the realest one, and vulnerability allows us to relate to each other and help each other through some stuff and realize we're not alone in this struggle. Um, my practices over the years have helped. Um, but I've battled with depression for probably coming up on like 10 years now. Um, and there have been times where it started to slip and I had to cling on to my practice. And then, I know a lot of folks, I'm not alone in this. The pandemic was a really difficult time. I had lost my little brother maybe like 6, 7 months before. I lost two other homies. But my little brother and another one to overdoses, like within a month of each other. Another friend right after to brain cancer that he'd been battling for years. And then during the pandemic, lost like two or three other homies. Of one took his life, one died of a random stroke, um, and my my alcohol consumption crept back in, and it was just minor for a bit, and grew and grew, and then my pops, the man who basically like taught me how to be a man, he passed away suddenly from an accident. He fell and had a brain injury, right a little bit before this past Thanksgiving, and I crumbled, I relapsed, um, I fell heavy back into my drinking and my depression and out of my practices, and felt myself slipping. I'm grateful that even though I had fallen out of it, and relapsing is a part of recovery. It's the scariest and most dangerous part of recovery, but it does happen, and I share that now publicly, um, because like I said, I haven't shared that publicly yet, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to do so because you know it's so easy for us to fall back in it and then feel like, well, all of that other work I did beforehand, it's like I'm just back here again. Might as well stay here. It's not how you get knocked down, and it's not even how you get back up. It's just that you get back up. Um, However long it takes and however you need to maneuver through it. So I'm grateful now to be back on my sobriety, to have put that bottle down again, and even further this time really have a fear is a strong emotional experience that can do a lot for you. Pema in that book says that fear is a natural reaction of moving closer to the truth. And the truth that I discovered within there during this relapse, um, was that I I thought I may be able to consume controllably, or with some level of decorum or consistency to be able to uh, consume responsibly. And I realized in that I just cannot. And therein lies a silver lining, a blessing, that I had to have that fear come present to realize that this is just a really big element for me. And I know I'm strong-willed enough. I I I underestimated, or maybe overestimated what I thought my strength was. But I think the real strength is knowing your strengths and your limits. So I'm grateful. I'm very, I'm back in my practices. And I'm very pleased and happy, that even though I was able to realize how this relapse, and the progression back into it, like being really close to a problem again, that could have just wiped out everything I've worked on since, um, stepping away from alcohol. That I'm even more diligent now in abstaining from alcohol. So it's a good silver lining. I'm pleased. I'm very blessed and happy.
So do you now consume alcohol, or are you just done with
Done with
it?
it. Never again. I
Okay.
I mean,
Uh,
maybe at a wedding they'll get a quick toast sip and set it down, but
uh,
that's about it.
Discipline, huh? Well, I'm sorry to hear about all your losses during the pandemic. Man, I don't even know, because to go through all those losses, and then you have to now sit by yourself, be forced to not have an outlet for your grief is pretty bad. I mean, every one of us struggled during this pandemic. I haven't heard one person say, "Oh, I did not struggle." Not even one. Because like from I struggled too, and all I struggled with was my mind couldn't get out of this. I couldn't, when I wanted to do something, I had to remain at home. So the outlet for my mind to be able to escape wasn't there. So I was just stuck, and I was constantly just beating myself up in my own mind, which is what I was trying to explain to you, that I rely on my mind heavily, and if it doesn't function correctly, I will struggle more than anybody in the world, I believe. Anyway, but man, I'm glad that you're able to make it out. You suffered with depression for 10 years. That's a very, very long time. But how did you get help for that?
Um, to be honest with you, I didn't for a lot of it. Um, for I have not been a practicing yogi or, deep in my consciousness for all of that decade. Um, it's getting close to it. And it's, likely, I imagine it's probably been longer than 10 years. I just wasn't conscious of what depression looked like or what it was, or that I was experiencing it, other than, just I come from a very rural country, and, archetype, like the archetype of a man based area where we just don't talk about that shit. It's just, nah, like, tough it up. You're just going through something. Life's tough. Get over it. Um, so as I began diving into, and really at that low point where I was having suicidal thoughts and realizing, like, my life is not that bad. Like, why do I just live in this anguish? Like, what's going on? And started looking a little deeper into it, and then, hit rock bottom, which was a very depressing time. And as I started diving more into these, reflections, these meditations, I began opening up and just talking to people, friends, family. Um, not Most all of them did not understand it or were there to be able to provide insult. So I started doing my research and diving deeper into my practices. And then eventually I began finding like-minded individuals who were a little bit more in tune with their emotional or, conscious selves, to just begin bouncing things off of one another. And then through beginning to have actual teachers in yoga and meditation and mindfulness, and my mentor, shout out Mahavira Yoga, Jay Miles, who I was just spending last night with for his birthday, um, began to help. eh, They began to help me do the work of self-reflection, while also being able to hold space for me, which is, very similar to what a therapist or a psychologist would do, without the um, instead of giving, prescriptions, which I definitely wanted to stay away from. I did not want to use substances, even, you know pharmaceutical grade substances, to try and maneuver through this, because I knew, you know I've already done that with under the table drugs. um, as opposed to over the counter ones. It's just a different, you know, means to an end, on the same path essentially. So I really just had a lot of folks that helped me begin to dive deeper into these practices and this self reflection, and put me on different teachers and guides, and the community within there has been really good. So that's been a really big help, and also too, once I began teaching, it's been really good for me to do things just like this, to keep it real about my struggles, um, because the more that we share about it, not only is it a form of healing, to just to not have to bear it all within our mind or our heart or our soul, alone, but to know just as much as my peoples that get the same sentiment from me, that we're not alone in this, and together we can go far. So that's been a lot of my healing and maneuvering through that.
Yeah, you know, this is life. This is what life is all about. I mean, you struggle, but you know, I tell people this all the time, that you have been through it and now you have a blueprint. So when someone is coming behind you and they're going through the same thing, you could advise them. You can't make them take a different route, but you could say, listen, this is what it is, this is what it is. And when they're coming out of it, you can actually provide tangible help, something that's going to help them. You know, because you cannot, if I tell you something based on my experience, you'll be like, what is she saying? And then you want to experience it for yourself, right? When you experience it for yourself and now you need help getting out of it, I have the tools to help you. So, you know, all our struggles are not in vain. They are never, ever, ever in vain. And today, look at where you are. I'm, we're hosting cooking rooms together. Listen, we are not the best cooks in the world. Well, you are a chef. I'm not a cook, but we are there, you know, with the little that we know. We're just holding space and being positive. You know, energy is important. Um, so tell us about your yoga pants and everything like that. Let's hear where we could go and find them.
Yeah. And before I tell you about that though, because I love talking about that. It's been a great element of my professional career. But I just wanted to recap on something that you had mentioned there about the blueprint, because my peoples know that I do not give advice. Whether these are my peoples that are practicing with me or just my friends, my family, I'd never give advice because I don't know your path, and I can't advise on that. I only offer insight and perspective. And a perfect example of that is, you know, I get asked a lot about relationship things. That's what, please help me through this relationship or whatever it may be. And I was like, I have no advice for you. I don't know the dynamics of this relationship. I don't know anything, but I'll share stories of what I've been through, and then give them context of it to, like, you know, to tie it in with the sobriety. You know, like I ended a relationship just at the end of the pandemic ish, you know, around the summer of last year. Woman I've loved the most in my entire life. But I was always better because of her. And I knew that where I was on the path of and needed to do the work of, she was only going to be worse because of me. And if you love someone really that much, like it's the hardest thing I've ever had to do, but I had to let her go so she could go forth and be better. And maybe one day we find each other again, but I can share a story like that with somebody and give my personal experience of it, and hope that through some certain practices of self-reflection, I can help them maneuver through something that they found within my story, as opposed to me trying to help them through their story, because only they can do that for themselves. So that's just a little anecdote I wanted to share on that. Um, However, in the professional career of what I do now, just to move jump ship on that one. In 2015, we began working on a brand called MetaMats, making yoga mats. 2016, we launched after some R&D and getting things rolling. We have grown and evolved our product at every single turn. We are hungry to, like, never just be satisfied with Just because something is good does not mean it cannot be improved upon. So we're always refining our mats. We work with independent artists from all over the globe to put their works of art onto our mats, and then have a patented surface coating that we put on there that gives it its grip, its vibrancy of color. You'll not see any mats on the market that look like ours at all. And we're really big about supporting the artists too. Life is art. This practice that we go through of yoga can have its own artistic qualities within it. And the same way that we can relate to our movements and our practices in our body, having these beautiful works of art on these mats allow us to have that emotional connection to the artwork that's there. And that's one of the beautiful things about our mats is people will find one that really a piece of artwork on their mat that they know is quality and is going to have the functional purposes of what we need out of a yoga mat. But there's something in that piece of art that speaks to them, that they relate to. So it elevates that practice even more. Um, we're based out of Philadelphia now. We started it. All of our myself and my co-founder, and then all of our employees and our staff, administrators within the company, we're all Virginia Tech alumni. We started it right down the street from our alma mater, and then grew to a level of size that we needed to move our headquarters to Philadelphia. But we make everything here in the States, which we're really proud of. In ethical and sustainable working conditions, we take care of our peoples. That's really big and important to us. And because a lot of our competitors are just buying in bulk from some third world nation, cheap labor, and then turn around and talk about all the great things we do for the world and love and yoga and light and all of this. And we like to walk the walk. So yeah, we've been rolling with that. We just launched our leggings through there as well. So we're moving into apparel in yoga also. And when I'm not, grinding away on all of that, I'm taking a break at present because I need to focus on my business and my own personal practice and my family as well. I'm helping to take care of my grandparents at present moment. So I'm just working remotely. But when the when life is a little more manageable, I travel the country and I teach yoga, meditation, mindfulness. I give lectures and lead discussions and conversations at universities, organizations, things of the sorts. Whether it be things for social matters, or the more conscious matters, or the blending between the two, where I might have conversations of how mindfulness can impact business, how to be uh, conscious in the world of capitalism, things of the sorts like that. So that's a little bit of the business grind.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, I wish you nothing but success, because if you're putting in that much work, you should only be successful. That's all I'm going to say about that. Thank you so much for coming on this podcast. I really do appreciate your time, and I'll see you on the greatest cooking show ever.
Yeah.